The 17th Airborne Division was an airborne infantry division of the United States Army during World War II, and was commanded by Major General William M.Miley.It. It was officially activated as an airborne division in April 1943 but was not immediately sent to a combat theater, remaining in the United States to complete its training. During this training process, the division took part in several training exercises, including the Knollwood Maneuver, in which it played a vital part in ensuring that the Airborne Division remained as a military formation in the U.S. Army after the poor performance of American airborne forces in the invasion of Sicily. As such, it did not take part in the first two large-scale airborne operations conducted by the Allies, Operation Husky and Operation Neptune, only transferring to Britain after the end of Operation Overlord. When the division arrived in Britain, it came under the command of 18th Airborne Corps, part of the 1st Allied Airborne Army, but was not chosen to participate in Operation Market Garden, the airborne landings in the Netherlands, as Allied planners believed it had arrived too late and could not be trained up in time for the operation. However, after the end of Operation Market Garden, the division was shipped to France and then Belgium to fight in the Ardennes during the Battle of the Bulge. The 17th gained its first Medal of Honor during its time fighting in the Ardennes, and was then withdrawn to Luxembourg to prepare for an assault over the River Rhine. In March 1945, the division participated in its first, and only, airborne operation, dropping alongside the British 6th Airborne Division as a part of Operation Varsity, where it gained 3 more Medals of Honor. The division then advanced through northern Germany until the end of World War II, when it briefly undertook occupation duties in Germany before shipping back to the United States. There, it was officially activated in September 1945, although it was briefly reactivated as a training division between 1948 and 1949. Formation. The German armed forces pioneered the use of large-scale airborne formations, first during the invasion of Norway and Denmark and later that year during the assaults on the Netherlands and Belgium in 1940 and later in the Battle of Crete in 1941. The Allied governments were aware of the success of these operations and decided to form their own airborne formations. This decision would eventually lead to the creation of 5 American and 2 British airborne divisions, as well as many smaller units. The 17th Airborne Division was activated on 15 April 1943 at Camp Mackle in North Carolina, under the command of the newly promoted Major General William M.Miley.It. The division was originally composed of the 513th Parachute Infantry Regiment, activated on the 11th of January 1943 at Fort Benning, the 193rd Glider Infantry Regiment, and the 194th Glider Infantry Regiment. The official dedication ceremony for the unit took place on the 1st of May 1943, with thousands of civilian and military spectators, including Major General Eldridge G. Chapman, overall Commander of Airborne Commandant of all American Airborne Forces during World War II. Once activated, the division remained in the United States for training and exercises, as the division, like all airborne units, was intended to be an elite formation. The training regime was extremely arduous. There were 250 feet and 34 feet towers built from which prospective airborne troops would jump off of to simulate landing by parachute, lengthy forced marches and practice jumps from transport aircraft. To pause in the doorway of an aircraft during a practice jump resulted in an automatic failure for the candidate. The resultant failure rate was accordingly high, but there was never a shortage of candidates, especially for the American divisions, as the rate of pay was much higher than that of an ordinary infantryman. As the division trained, a debate developed in the U.S. Army over whether the best use of airborne forces was en masse or as small compact units. On the 9th of July 1943, the first large-scale Allied airborne operation, the Allied invasion of Sicily, was carried out by elements of the U.S. 82nd Airborne Division and the British 1st Airborne Division. The commanding general of the U.S. 11th Airborne Division, Major General Joseph May Swing, had been temporarily assigned to act as airborne advisor to General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the supreme Allied commander in the Mediterranean, for the invasion of Sicily, and had observed the airborne assault, which went badly. The U.S. 82nd Airborne Division had been deployed by both parachute and glider and had suffered high casualties, leading to a perception that it had failed to achieve many of its objectives. Swing board. General Eisenhower had reviewed the airborne role in Operation Husky, and had concluded that large-scale formations were too difficult to control in combat to be practical. Lieutenant General Leslie J. McNair, commander of Army Ground Forces, had similar misgivings. Once an airborne supporter, he had been greatly disappointed by the performance in North Africa and, more recently, Sicily. However, other high-ranking officers believed otherwise, notably the U.S. Army Chief of Staff, George Marshall. He persuaded Eisenhower to set up a review board and to withhold judgment on the effectiveness of divisional-sized airborne forces until a large-scale maneuver could be tried in December. When Swing returned to the United States to resume command of the 11th Airborne Division in mid-September 1943, he had an additional role. McNair ordered him to form a committee, the Swing Board, composed of U.S. Army Air Forces parachute and glider infantry, and artillery officers, to arrange a large-scale maneuver that would effectively decide the fate of the divisional-sized airborne force. As the 11th Airborne Division was in reserve in the United States, and had not yet been earmarked for overseas shipment, the Swing Board chose it as the test formation. It would be opposed by a composite combat team from the 17th Airborne Division with a battalion for the 541st Parachute Infantry Regiment temporarily attached. The maneuver would also provide both divisions with further airborne training, as had occurred several months previously in a large-scale maneuver undertaken by the 82nd and the 101st Airborne Divisions. Knollwood Maneuver. The objective for the 11th as the attacking force was to capture Knollwood Army Auxiliary Airfield near Fort Bragg in North Carolina, after which the maneuver was named. The defending forces were to try to defend the airport and the surrounding area and repel the airborne assault. The entire operation would be observed by Lieutenant General McNair. His observations and reports to the U.S. War Department, and ultimately General Eisenhower, would do much to decide the success or failure of the exercise. The Knollwood Maneuver took place on the night of the 7th of December, with the troops of the 11th Airborne Division being delivered to 13 separate objectives by 200 C-47 Dakota transport aircraft and 234 Waco CG-4A gliders, with 85% of the airborne troops being delivered to the target without navigational error. The transport aircraft were divided into 4 groups, each taking off from a different airfield in the Carolinas, with 2 groups dropping paratroopers and 2 towing gliders, and between them deployed 4,800 airborne troops in the first wave. These airborne troops then seized the Knollwood Army Auxiliary Airfield from the defending troops and secured the area in which the rest of the division landed, all before daylight. Having secured their initial objectives, the 11th Airborne Division then conducted a coordinated ground attack against a reinforced infantry regiment, as well as several aerial resupply and casualty evacuation missions in coordination with transport aircraft. The exercise was judged to be a great success by those who observed it. McNair reported that the success of the maneuver pleased him, and highlighted the great improvements in airborne training that had occurred in the months between the end of Operation Husky and the Knollwood Maneuver. Due to the success of the units of the 17th Airborne Division during the exercise, the divisional-sized airborne force was deemed to be effective and was allowed by Eisenhower to remain.